Sipping on Cinema begins in 3, 2, 1.
Let me just
Ooh, starting off the series, not even a series, the show with
was
the
pretty good, right?
sound.
Yeah,
That was good.
I like
Mine's
that.
not going to be as impressive. It's going to be wait, there you go. A little critical crackle.
That was good too. I like that. And it's a wide variety of sips
Correct.
we're taking, but I don't know. I mean, nothing beats the intro that you made, so I think that's going to top anything that we try. But without further ado, let's get in my little intro here. But welcome to Sipping on Cinema, where we're perfecting the mixology of movies and drinks, pairing great films with the perfect pour for conversations that flow smooth and linger like a fine bourbon. We're your hosts, JRB and Bethanne Ciaccio-Tarpley, and now we sip. What are you sipping
Well,
tonight?
I have to choose. Well, that's the thing. See, you prepared. I went to the liquor store, okay, the ABC store here, and I bought a bunch of bottles. And the guy, when he was checking me out for the bottles, went, "So how old are you?" Like, he didn't want to look at my ID, and I said 32. And he was like, "Oh." And then he kept processing it, and he goes, "Do you want a bag?" And I was like, and I already had him in my hand. I was walking out the door, and I was like, "No." And he says, "Okay, because in the state of Virginia, you don't have to have a bag." I was like, "Okay."
What was this guy's first day on the job?
I don't know. The whole time it was just awkward. But anyway,
Asking for the age but not the ID is pretty wild.
It's pretty,
Is that offensive? Is that a comp? I don't even know how to take that.
He's just one of the cool ones. I'm not going to tell you where he's at. I'm not going to advocate that you shouldn't check IDs, wink, wink, but
All right, well, it's time to search the great state of Virginia for the
yes. Where is he? I don't know his name. We're going to say John. Where is John? We're going to find him. John.
John, the Virginia liquor store clerk. We're going to find this guy.
We're going to find him.
Maybe he'll be our first guest, but
So anyway, I have 3 to choose from, and I need you to tell me which one to do. And it's in order of the cheapest to the most expensive, and they're the little bottle guys. There's a Old Smoky Tennessee, and it's called Salty Caramel Whiskey, because I'm a baby. And then the other one's called Bird Dog, and it's a peach whiskey.
Oh.
And then this one was $4, so I assumed it was expensive. Good. And it's Elijah Craig, small batch 1789.
Okay, well, the first one sounds like a brand of shorts that I used to wear. I don't know if I want to go that route.
Old Smokies.
No, I meant Bird Dogs. I don't. That third one sounds classy. I like the idea of something that would be the top shelf of shooters.
Okay, so Elijah Craig.
Yeah, our good sir Elijah. Yeah, let's try it out. Is that a green glass? What is that?
It is a green. It's like that Coke green.
I like that. That's nice.
It
reminds me of those old bottles. Yeah.
For the record, for anyone listening, I don't really drink whiskey. Yeah, I designed a logo around whiskey.
Yeah, it might have been a little bit of an oversight, but naming it Sipping on Cinema was one thing. Making the logo a whiskey glass might not have been the best move, because neither of us are really.
Well, what the hell was I going to put it in? A stem glass? Who's having wine at a cigar lounge? I mean, I'm sorry.
Hey, it gets the message across. It works. I'm just saying that, if you really dig into it, it doesn't make a ton of sense. But hey, maybe by 10 episodes, we'll be whiskey lovers.
I suffer for the show, for the content.
We'll give it a try. We'll see how it goes.
Here we go.
We're drinking something. Oh, premium audio content. So let's get into the movie that we're going to be sipping on today. And that is probably what is my favorite movie of all time. It's the movie that redefined superhero films and kicked off a cinematic universe like no other. It's propelled pretty much, well, I was going to say every cast member, but I'm now realizing that there were recasted members in that group. But some cast members have gone on to do some amazing things, some incredible things, and it's created like I said, an entire universe of characters that we've grown to know and love. The movie we're discussing today is Iron Man. Now, when I think of the movie Iron Man, the first one, I'm incredibly biased. I don't think that there's a movie we could have picked where I would have been more biased than this one. So I think that says two things about us. One, it says that we have courage because we chose to be biased to start things off. And two, shows that we don't care what people think. Where am I going with this, Bethanne?
Here. I don't know if I'm supposed to drink that. But... also, fun fact.
Thank you. That was good.
Fun fact. It's after, like, okay, that went down the wrong pipe.
This is going great.
Listen, it's not a train wreck your first episode. Are you even like podcasting?
I mean, if anything, we're really showing our true selves here. I think this is admirable.
But it burns after about 2 minutes, which is impressive. It doesn't burn right away. It's after 2 minutes. And you know what? I can't think of a better explanation for this show. It's the one that gets you.
It's the burn that sneaks up on you. Yeah, it lingers.
Okay, continue.
That's good. That's appropriate. I like that. Well, before we get into the real talk of this movie, I want to know, because I think this movie's super fitting for what we're trying to do with this show, and a lot of it's around, you know, alcoholic beverages and being slightly but not too much inebriated. Tony Stark was drinking this entire movie. I feel like every time we saw him, he had a drink in his hand, or someone did. Favorite drink order in the movie, I'll get to that in a minute. But of the drinks that Tony had in his hand, or I guess anyone, you know, that Pepper Potts had her own drink order. I think Rhodey was drinking something on the plane. So I'll leave it up to you. What was your favorite drink order in this movie?
I mean, whenever he, you know, explodes a bunch of shit and then opens that like dry ice, I don't know what's in there, but it's got to be good.
That was great. He says, what is this? It comes with any purchase of 50 mil or more? Or
500 million, yeah.
500 mil, there we go. That was pretty sweet. I mean, that alone, I mean, we're showcasing all of his weapons that he's invented. That really flew under the radar, as like, he's got his own personal little bar that he carries around with him. And like you said, the dry ice coming out of it was such a nice touch. That was cool.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was just bourbon on the rocks. I don't think it was anything mixed or fancy. I think he just brought his favorite whiskey with him and decided to sip on it on the ride back.
Had to be. It's probably like a $3. I'm convinced that like when it's rich things like that, it's probably like a $3 bottle of whiskey, but it's the experience.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they got the look across, you know, really it's probably nothing fancy, but to Tony Stark within that cinematic universe, I bet it was top notch for sure. Because he would only drink the top of the line, you know.
Correct.
Now, later he ends up at a gala where we see him drinking again, but it was the gala he wasn't even invited to, even though it had his own name on it. Do you think he would have had like a signature drink at that gala if he did know about it?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. What do you think it'd be?
The Stark Stinger.
Wow, I hadn't even got into what you would call it yet. The Stark Stinger. That
would be the signature drink name.
That's phenomenal.
And it would be probably like, you know, when you go to 7-Eleven and you just do like, you do the suicides, right? You just start going down the line. It would taste like that, but with alcohol.
Oh my God.
So it's really, once again, not even about the flavor of it. Which,
oh, geez. Yeah, no, it's more like the Stark Suicide. That sounds crazy.
Correct.
So you're putting a little bit of everything in there.
Correct. It's just taking the top shelf and saying, shot of this, a shot of this, a shot of this, and then a little spritz of club soda.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
make it different.
No, I like it. That's good. I mean, it's definitely unique. It's going to be an acquired taste for sure. Not everyone's going to like it. Some people are even going to turn their nose up at it. But for those of us that love that type of drink, I think it'd be a great option. Well, okay, I was going to ask you what he would name it, but the Stark Stinger is that's pretty great. So let's go ahead and get into some bar talk. And that is just where everything is now with this Iron Man movie. It came out in 2008. It's been out for more than half of my life. I first saw this movie when I was 10.
Wow.
I hadn't even turned 11 yet. I was still a brand new double digiter, if you will. But I mean, RDJ, he had already been 20-ish years into his acting career, if not longer.
Yeah. Like this was the movie that brought him back.
Exactly,
after he
right. I
got
mean, he had been
drug
in
issue.
Hollywood forever. He had gotten into a ton of trouble, and I mean, anyone can look up that stuff and go into it. But what this movie did for RDJ specifically, it turned his entire career around and gave him a new identity in Hollywood, and something that he was really invested in and was able to bring a lot of success out of. And now you see him in movies like Oppenheimer, or even on Broadway now, performing in McNeil, which I would love to go see. And he's even doing method acting on HBO Max, or Max, or you know,
Yeah,
the
I don't
HBO
know.
one. But then you have like actual legitimate organizations he's founded, like the Footprint Coalition, where he's legitimately trying to make a difference. Um, I I I think that he really kind of morphed into a variant of Tony Stark in real life. The whole
Yeah.
philanthropy and all the social and economic and ecological outreach that he's doing, where he's invested in so many different parts of the world now. And it's just cool that he's kind of used this as a model almost, where in this movie we see Tony Stark trying to, change and become something more. And then you see RDJ kind of take this similar path after he stars in this movie. And it's almost a little fortuitous, if you will.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, one of the best things I ever heard Robert Downey Jr. say, just in general, not acting, he was at this event, is he talks about hugging the cactus. Okay. Like you hug the cactus, you realize your wrongs and you get better.
Mm,
And that's now he was speaking about Mel Gibson, which is neither here nor there, but it's a really good analogy. It has stuck with me, no pun intended. Um,
oh,
yeah, I know, I
I
know.
wasn't going to intend any pun there. So
It just happened. It just happened.
you
But,
intended
you
that
know,
pun.
with that being said, I think RDJ as like a person, yeah, like it Iron Man does mirror and mimic his own he can bring so much into the character because it mimics so much of his life.
Mm,
Just being that playboy hotshot, always drinking, always doing something he shouldn't do, having a life-changing event, and then realizing I got to get better for the world.
yeah.
I gotta do things in this world. So I think that's why he is so good at it because he lives it.
There's a lot of that. I mean, he's not the only one really that had his career absolutely propelled from this movie. Jon Favreau is respected in Hollywood as one of like the top tier like superhero directors now.
Right.
He's been doing The Mandalorian for years, and he's also a trailblazer. Implementing new technologies like the volume to bring new levels of visual entertainment. I think even in Deadpool and Wolverine, he showed up as like this kind of like almost like a founding father of the MCU, and so like he's kind of switched from acting to directing and producing, and you see that in the MCU as well, where now he's kind of like one of the guys in the background kind of facilitating things.
Right.
But yeah, it's cool to see how much of an impact this movie had and how they're still trying to build off of that story and use the components that they introduced back in 2008, when I was still in grade school. But yeah, I mean,
Little baby J.
yeah, it was
Little baby J.
a little bit ago, yeah. But now we're sipping to this movie and we're loving it. I mean, obviously, I picked this movie. This was me. Um, I, Bethanne and I will both have movies that we pick back and forth with that we're talking about here. I got blessed with the first one and I chose my favorite movie ever. So, I mean, I was sold on this film before I even saw it. When I bought the junior novel because I thought Iron Man was the coolest. He had all the tech, and the soundtrack was like a rock and roll soundtrack. It wasn't like the typical Raimi Spider-Man score that you would hear. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, no hate, no disrespect there, but this was such a switch up from what you were used to with the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, the Spider-Man movies. The score was very triumphant, very heroic, but very very much a background element. It
Mhm.
would contribute where it needed to, but it wasn't so much a personality trait of the movie, if you will. I feel like Iron Man did that, and so even in the trailers you could hear that, that the rock and roll music kind of keeping the energy up even in the slower moments. I just felt like Iron Man brought a fresh take to everything. So getting a chance to be able to really dive into it and talk about the parts that I do like, I'm super excited about. But I gotta know, because we've never really discussed this movie at length.
No.
I know I asked you to watch it specifically for this. We're gonna do that for all of this. I'm not gonna try to remember a movie I saw 5 years ago. I'll rewatch it if we're talking about it. But I know you put this on recently. We're going to do a Letterboxd review for all these movies. I don't know if you want to reveal that much yet, but I want to get your first reaction on how you feel about Iron Man, putting it on most recently, and how you felt about it as it's, been out over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I think my first reaction going back and watching it, and it's so interesting because going back to the 2000s media, it just feels so different to what we have today, yet it wasn't so long ago.
Hmm.
At least for me. And so like going back to it and seeing like it being the start of the MCU, and I'm sure they had some intentions of it, but it just being a film. It
Right.
just being a film. And it
Yes.
just it hits it on all parts. I mean, you have RDJ. He is just, killing it. I'm sure I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But, I just love stories that like drop you in the middle
Mhm.
and you just have to go along for the ride and figure it out.
Right. Yeah, it's not all
And
set up. It's
yeah.
here you are, figure it out.
Yeah. And so like it's so interesting to see like middle of the story. There's elements in there that, wouldn't pass the Disney test, right? Wouldn't pass like pre-buying the Disney buying MCU.
Mhm.
So it's just nice to see like a movie that just can be its thing.
Oh,
An
yeah.
MCU movie that can be its thing.
It's funny we say that now. When Iron Man first came out, we weren't really having that feeling of like everyone calls it the superhero fatigue, if you will, where we're
Right.
like, oh my God, these sentiments that we're saying are partly how well this movie has aged over time, even in an era where we're being bogged down by so much superhero content. This one holds up because at its core, it's a really well told story, and it's well told both in the writing, it's well told cinematically through the visuals and even the sound, like we talked about the score, but also how much original sound they had to make for this movie too. I mean, if you think about Iron Man's arc reactors, his repulsors, that sound is iconic, and it's still used, and you can recognize it in other Marvel movies when they use it for something else. And
Yeah.
so the impact that this movie had, it ages really well, even in a time where we're being hit left and right with superhero after superhero.
Right.
And now we're able to appreciate it for the fact that it's just a damn good story that's being told. So I really appreciate that, and I totally agree. So with all that being said, I mean, what in this movie specifically really resonated with you? What'd you like the most?
I think for me, and this is coming from truly a story perspective. I like well-developed characters, like at the beginning. Like they don't have to get their legging. They don't have to get their footing. I'm sorry. They don't have to get their footing yet because you already know their presence within the first 5 minutes. That is so rare these days in filmmaking and
It
storytelling.
really is, yeah.
That I think that's why Iron Man is such an impactful character that was in the MCU and apparently is coming back as in Doctor Doom. But anyway, regardless,
gosh.
like
Yeah, we didn't
don't
even
have
touch
to
on
talk
that.
about that. We don't have to talk about that. That's for 2 drinks in. But when I can really
Here,
go,
I'll race you.
you know what grinds my gears?
Tell me.
That's that conversation. But
No, but I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
we just watched a movie recently called The Big Chill. I think it's from like 1983, but it has a bunch of big names in it that look a heck of a lot younger than they look today. But the one of the most impressive attributes of it was how well they were able to introduce these characters with so minimal dialogue or interaction. But I felt like by the time that all the characters got together, you already had a sense of who each of them were and what they really brought to the table. And I think Iron Man does that really well, where it's not so much dialogue focused like everything is today, where they have to really explain it to you. A lot of it's
Yeah.
in the mannerisms, or it's in what he doesn't say,
Right.
or what he doesn't react or respond to, where you get to learn kind of the tendencies of this character in the moment. And then that allows you to drop him into these really tough situations really early on. And then you're continuing to learn about him from a new perspective. So, I mean, the way that they crafted Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark as a character, I mean, the first shot isn't even his face. It's just this, I
Right.
mean, he's just sitting there. He's in a convoy with a bunch of soldiers, and he's just in a suit sipping on whiskey. And right away, you can tell by his aloofness that he's kind of like, he's just there for the ride. You know, nothing's really thrilling him except for the buck he's going to make by the time he gets back.
Yeah.
But then it makes you appreciate the switch up so much more later on.
Oh, absolutely. It's nice sometimes, with expedition and MacGuffins, right, to get the story moving forward. It's nice when you just like these dropping in the middle stories, like I was talking about before. It's nice when you can just like figure it out as you go along, like the characters figuring it out. Like you're already in the convoy, you already know these people, and it's a very special technique that I wish I saw more in films, to be honest with you. But I guess you got to have a really strong actor like RDJ to pull it off, because
Yeah, that's
he
a good point.
is telling the story, like you said, through his mannerisms, through his really quick quips. Like
Yeah.
a quick quip, like, I'm going to donate you to a public college, you know what I'm saying, a state college. You just found out three
Or
things about that
good
man,
God, I
you know?
good God, you're a woman. Like it's so quick, and it's so witty that it really it leaves a lot of room for you to sit and appreciate it, because he's so good at delivering that. So you're right. Having a strong actor at the helm is really the key to success there, because I mean, he brings so much. Like you mentioned Doom, like I really imagine what they see in him for Dr. Doom is the eye acting. He
Mhm.
is easily the best eye actor in the world, and I've said that to pretty much everyone
It makes sense.
that it's come up to. I mean, but if you picture Dr. Doom, a lot of times you only see his eyes through those little slits in his mask, and who's better at expressing their emotion with their eyes than RDJ? I mean, I'm thinking Captain America: Civil War. I'm thinking all of these Iron Man movies. You know, he really brings so much more to the table with his ability to convey emotion without saying anything.
Yeah.
And that, you're right, I think is missing a lot, because that's not really where the priority is. And when it comes to exposition, like you said, it almost does more when you don't say it. You know, if you can find a way to tell it without saying it out loud, I feel like it adds a lot of
Mhm.
value, because then you're not focused on absorbing the info verbally. You can really take in the rest of the experience without being bogged down by that info.
Right. No, absolutely. It's a film that trusts your intellect,
Yeah, right.
you know?
It's almost like a compliment when the director trusts you enough to infer some things, you know, where it's like, did you really need to lay all that out for me? Like you can pick that up with a couple gestures, you know? So like Jon
Yeah.
Favreau did I think a really good job being able to tell the story in a way that's intuitive, in a way that it didn't really affect the pacing of the movie that much. You know, it was able to really move along at a good speed, because the information you were picking up along the way was really digestible.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can credit a lot of different reasons for that, but I mean, when it comes to the cast, I mean, the fact that it was such a small cast too, I think it really worked so many wonders for this movie, because you had RDJ and Gwyneth Paltrow, who were amazing even back when this movie was coming out, and there were rumors they hated each other.
Mhm.
Their chemistry is so good, and you can tell so much of it is improvised, but done so eloquently. And then Terrence Howard, I think, plays a great Rhodey. I
He
I
he
I
does.
I
He really
like
does.
Rhodey to be a little bit more exasperated, a little bit more. I don't know. Uh, I like how Don Cheadle kind of compliments RDJ in a way where, you know, RDJ's really kind of not frantic, but a little more jumpy and on edge, and Don Cheadle's more of the cool, collected type. It was a little bit more fun when it was chaotic on both ends, where they're going back and forth and they're a little bit high strung, you know, both ways. But
Sure.
I liked Terrence Howard in this, and I wouldn't have hated if they kept using him as War Machine. And I mean, other than that, there's really only 2 or 3 other characters, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But I really think that the small cast does a lot for this movie. Do you agree?
Oh, I agree 100% because it allows you to kind of play off each other a little bit more
Mm,
because you kind of know each other's personalities. And I think for this
mm,
film, it benefits from it.
hmm.
Um, because it does give you those chances to, how this person's going to react, allows you to improv a little bit, but also work with the script as well. So yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. It's a good balance. It's like a
Yeah.
drink.
It, I just it is like a drink, isn't it?
Balances burns. This like kind of, I guess, tastes like caramel on the way out. I don't fucking know. But
Do you think you'll get it again, or is this more of a one and done?
I don't know. I mean,
Okay,
here's the
still feeling
thing.
it out. We'll see
I'm
what it
still
does to
feeling
you.
it out. You're talking to a cider, beer, and usually a vodka kind of person. So this is more of
Okay.
like the adult is in the room kind of situation, which is kind of hard for
I
me.
get
But
it.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
I
The
get it.
palate will
No.
develop like the show.
I like that. I'm more of a tequila guy myself. I just didn't want to get that crazy on episode 1.
Yo,
Alexis
could you
is
imagine? Bro,
no,
we would be like,
yes, I could imagine, and that's why I didn't do it.
yeah, it would just be constantly like, and then.
Right. Yeah, we'll save that. We'll save that
Yeah.
for Cinco de Mayo or something.
But what were you saying about our
um,
executive producer in the background?
Alexis, my beautiful wife, who you'll hear plenty about on this show, currently working my screens and does social media and everything else for us. She's sipping on a the caramel apple.
I'm gonna
Caramel
bring her
apple
on the
Smirnoff
screen for a
vodka.
second.
Oh, she's bringing you on.
Alexis,
Producer Alexis, this is my wife. You're muted, but if you want to say something, please feel free.
Heyo.
Heyo.
Hi,
This
cuties.
is our one and only behind the scenes person doing all of
Let-
our background stuff for
Let
us.
me
So
tell you, every podcast needs an Alexis. Like having that third person just to like help with like the day-to-day things and some of the executive stuff. It's been a beautiful friendship so far.
it has
Oh,
been
well.
awesome.
Everybody needs their guy in the chair. I'm just the girl
That's
in the
right.
chair.
That's right.
Bringing
That's
girlies
perfect.
to the chairs where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect.
That's what
I love
hear.
it. I love
All
you.
right. Any closing
Love
words,
you.
Alexis, before I kick you off?
No, you guys are doing fantastic.
Thank you, Alexis.
Awesome. Yeah. So she's sipping on some caramel apple Smirnoff. Maybe we
God,
just
that
got to
sounds
do
good.
some seasonal drinks from now on. Maybe get your excitement level up. Although
Let's-
that did make for a pretty good story.
Yeah, like caramel. Like you do the vodka with the apple cider, man.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-mm-mm.
Right. Exactly.
Good
Exactly.
stuff. Anyway,
I hate to cut you off again, but now I think Lady wants to get in on this.
you should bring
All right.
Lady.
Well, if the wife got on, then so does the dog. So go
That's
around.
right. Where's the dog?
We're gonna try to say hi. Come here. Come here. All right.
I
We're
would
really
bring
off
on
the rails
Mia
now.
and Ollie. Oh,
My
Lady!
Come here,
I
bud.
am telling you guys, seeing Lady every other week has been such a joy.
She is a game changer for sure.
She is.
She makes everything better.
We'll someday introduce Mia and Ollie Biscuit, but my dinner plate that I was eating off is on the floor, so I'm not letting them in. 'Cause I didn't have any room on my desk.
Yeah, they'll trounce that for sure. All right.
Yes.
This is so off the rails, but I mean,
Oh,
I
you're
love it.
You're
I don't
editing.
Here's a good question for you. I wanted
Go
to
ahead.
ask you this earlier, but I purposely didn't mention this character because I had a feeling you'd want to talk about it at length. Who's more likely to be a bad tipper at a bar? Pre-arc reactor Tony Stark or regular Obadiah Stane?
Oh, that's good.
I'm thinking it's Obi.
You're hitting me in a topic that I'm actually very passionate about, which is tipping your servers and over tipping.
Oh, couldn't
But
agree more.
super passionate about it. They're some of the hardest working people. We don't pay them enough.
Oh, everyone should work food industry at least a year.
Yes. So here's what I think. I think pre-suit Tony Stark would have done what was required of him. So if he's at a party with 60 people and it's always a guaranteed 18% gratuity, he's going to do an 18% gratuity. And maybe if he's drunk enough, he's going to throw an extra 100 on the thing.
Yeah.
With Obadiah, I think if people are watching, he will be one of those high tippers.
That's what it is.
20%,
It's the
25%.
image.
When no one is watching, he ain't going to tip.
You're right.
He ain't
It's
gonna tip.
totally the image of the thing. I mean, we saw that was his first scene in the movie, was him sitting at that award show knowing he was going to have to accept the award on Tony's behalf. And you could tell right off of that one scene, that's been their entire dynamic throughout Tony's young career, is that he probably, honestly, Tony might not have known that award show was that night. It might not have been that it slipped his mind. It might have been that Obadiah didn't tell him, because we find out
It
by the
could
end of
be.
the movie that Obi is pulling strings in the background like nobody's business, filing injunctions against Tony to get him out of the company while saying it was the board that made the decision. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even the little things like that, accepting awards and stuff. He doesn't even tell Tony that it's happening, so he can show up and be
No.
the face of the company.
That's exactly right.
It's a master craft, but Obi was rotten to the core. He was someone that I think, I mean, he played the villain so well. You hated him even before you knew he was really the bad guy. I mean, obviously, you know, with movies like this, if you follow the marketing, you're going to know who the antagonist is most times. Looking at you, Iron Man 3, but
another soapbox for another day, man.
We will get to it. I
you.
promise you, on this podcast
Drink 3
with JRB, we will get to it.
We got to get on that. Yeah.
Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. So I think this is a natural segue to things we didn't like, but it's not going to be in what you think. So I thought Jeff Bridges did a great job playing Obadiah. I agree with everything you said. You like him, and then you have to hate to like him, right?
Yeah.
But I do think Jeff Bridges was wasted as an actor in that role, because I see so much more potential for him in the MCU. Like, he could have had such deeper roles. Like, I'm thinking, like, you know, my first thought was like, you know, have like a Loki type character that just shows up, like, because he's such a good actor that I just feel like Obadiah right out of the gate is like,
it's a strong start.
It's a strong start, but I wish I had him in something else.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what
a
I
good
mean?
point.
Because
I mean,
think he could be like, he's almost like an EOS character, right? Like Kurt Russell. I always get him confused anyway sometimes, like, because they're kind of similar. But like having those characters that just like grind on you, like those,
I see. Yeah, someone
you know
who's
what I
constantly
mean?
showing up as like a kind of like throwing a wrench in things, almost like.
And it's weird to see Jeff Bridges polite, because his characters are always either high as a kite, as in Big Lebowski, which he's in the back of me right now. Those are my little what are they? The little cross stitch Big Lebowski from Leah. But he's either high as a kite, or he's grumpy old man like he is in True Grit. Okay. He's always playing a character who's got a grudge on his shoulders. And Obadiah does have a little bit of a grudge on his shoulders, but it's not about the grudge for Obadiah. It's about the image. And we very seldom see Jeff Bridges play a nice character. And sure, it's nice to see him a little bit nice, but I just think there's so much deeper to that actor that I wish they would have saved him.
Yeah. And I think that's what this movie does so well, is that it really communicates that there's a lot more than what you see on the surface, is that it implies the history really well, to where you feel the gravitas of the decisions that are being made, where when Obadiah Stane comes and finds Tony in his living room and uses that device on him to paralyze him, and pretty much just gives his whole, you know, supervillain spiel, where he's going over his evil plan and, you know, the typical Dr. Doofenshmirtz stuff, you know. But when he's going through all that, you feel the relationship that Tony's had with him for most of his life. And part of this is due to the acting, but the betrayal that's in there, there's so much depth to it, where it's more so than just, like I said, surface level. There's so much more to it than that, you know. A lot of it is in the acting, some of it's in the writing, but that's something that this movie does well, but it leaves you wanting more, where you're like, oh man, you know, he was
a one and done.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he could have been a thorn in his side for years to come.
I mean,
you know,
Ben
especially
Kingsley came back multiple times. Also,
yeah, he's going to be in the new
actor.
Wonder Man show.
No, yeah, we're talking about this now.
We saw the trailer for Wonder Man, and we're like, no way. They found ways to use him where I'm like, why are they're bending over backwards to keep Ben Kingsley in the MCU, but it's working. But why didn't they do the same for Jeff Bridges?
Exactly. What's his face from Incredible Hulk? He even showed up a couple times. Like,
You're right,
not
Samuel Stern. Yeah,
fair.
He's going to be in Captain America: Brave New World as presumably
as
the leader.
Red Hulk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Red Hulk is Harrison Ford's character.
Can you believe we're getting Harrison Ford as Red Hulk?
I mean,
I
that's
know this is not at
hilarious.
all related, but we might as well touch on current MCU stuff. Harrison Ford taking over in the MCU is crazy. I never would have expected them to recast a
No.
character for an actor who died to begin with, because with Chadwick Boseman, they made it pretty clear they didn't want to do that. But with the story they want to tell here, it seems like maybe it's worth the move. But yeah, Harrison Ford is pretty good for the MCU, I think.
I think so. Because Harrison Ford is a good actor, and
It's
he
a name
just
like Jeff Bridges, honestly.
Yeah.
It brings a
goes in and
lot
does
of
his job.
credibility to the table.
Yeah, 100%.
It's weird how they're feeling the need for that now, whereas with a movie like Iron Man, it wasn't so much. They were almost risking their credibility by making that movie.
Mhm.
With casting a guy like RDJ, it was a
Right.
questionable decision at the time. We
He was
talked about
almost
how
blacklisted from
exactly
Hollywood.
right. I mean, Favreau really had to advocate for RDJ because he saw the vision that he had as with him as Tony Stark. But I mean, that wasn't clear to everyone right at the jump. So I mean, it was a risk for sure, and a risk that ended up paying off. But now you see the MCU, it's almost like they're going in the opposite direction, where they feel like they need the big names to be able to keep it afloat. And I was really hesitant to say that about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it does feel like that's where they're at. So we'll see how it goes. But
Yeah.
that's because they're still trying to be what this movie was. It's because the blueprint is something like this. And I really think it stands the test of time better than most anything else in the superhero genre. I mean, was there really anything else about this movie that you didn't care for? Because I mean, I know with a guy like me, I'm not going to tell you that there's much that I don't like.
This is a hot take.
I love
so this is a very small complaint.
Okay.
But of all the American cheeseburgers
that
that Stark could have
Here we
gotten,
go.
I told you it was coming in our text messages today. Of all the cheeseburgers, this man gets Jon Favreau to pull up to a Burger King.
Cheeseburger first.
It's just like,
all right,
when
so what's
I
your gripe?
think of America,
What's wrong with Burger King?
A lot.
Tell me.
It's not good. Guys, it's
not
good.
Robert Downey Jr. agrees with you.
Yeah. Then why did they do that to him? Why did they have to embarrass the man like that in front of millions of audiences?
You know what?
Like,
Now that I'm thinking about it, it might not be officially stated, so we're gonna have to fact check this. But there's a story of RDJ, and now during his quote unquote downfall, if you will, where he was at his lowest, he got a burger from Burger King, and he said that burger was so bad that it made him reevaluate his entire life. And so I've always taken this as an homage to Burger King and almost a thank you, like, hey, because that's the turning point for Tony Stark. When he goes to that press conference, he's eating that cheeseburger. That's where everything changes. He shuts down the weapons manufacturing division of his company, and he lets the world know, hey, I'm taking a new direction as he's eating that cheeseburger. So for me,
that's a cute story.
I have to believe that that's why RDJ chose that. I have to think that they were going into that scene, and that was a decision that RDJ made. And he said, hey, John, I think this would work really well in this movie, and it's really personal to me. You think we can get this done? Again, I have no idea if that's how it went down, but I know that story's true.
It's
and I choose to believe that that's it.
For like a Hallmark film. Christmas at Burger King.
Don't do this to me.
Fantastic. Here's the problem I have. Burger King is such dog shit that when you
he's in the States.
Show the
How else
logo,
are you gonna know you're in America if not eating greasy, shitty American fast food?
McDonald's, Wendy's, Five Guys. That man can say, I want a cheeseburger and show up with a Chick-fil-A sandwich. I want to fucking
It's a balanced reality. You went over this earlier.
Like,
It's American cheeseburger, but it's not.
Just by showing that logo, Burger King made millions off of it. A dog shit company made millions off of I understand you have sentimental things, but there are bigger things here, RDJ.
All right, well, there goes our chances of ever being sponsored by Burger King. But we'll have it our way. Thank you very much. That was terrible. Man,
I
okay,
might-
so other than your gripe with the choice in cheeseburgers, was there anything about this movie that doesn't sit right with you? Something that you'd prefer not to sip on in the future?
the only thing is that and Jeff Bridges.
Jeff
And it
Bridges and the
really,
burger.
considering that my Jeff Bridges is not even really a critique, it's just
Mm.
more of a I wish situation, which is a much lower stake negative thing, if you will.
An important distinction in superhero cinema, because a lot of people say,
Yes.
oh, they should have done this, and they think it's a worse movie because of that.
And it's not a worse movie because
Mm.
Jeff Bridges took it. It's literally he did the best. He did so good in the role. And so that's kind of the distinction there is I wish they would have used him elsewhere.
Mm.
But he did a great job in the role. And so like besides those two things, I mean the film is legendary for a reason. It's Jon Favreau, like you were talking about, has done such a he's one of the best storytellers that we have
Mhm.
right now. Yeah, he's had a couple misses as he kind of went on into the 2010s and things like that, but
As people do.
as people do. Um
I just watched a
but, yeah,
terrible Judd Apatow film last night, and he's one of my favorite directors. So I mean,
Yeah.
everybody misses.
everyone has a swing and a miss. But, you know, I think overall, you know, like this is an iconic film and it's iconic for a reason. It's one of those films that you just kind of you're going to look back on years from now. I already hear film critics rolling their eyes, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like it's kind of in those category of films where like a Casablanca, a Space Odyssey. It's like films that you know are really good and stand the test of time and they're good for a reason. It's like E.T. All right. Like
E.T. That's a great example.
you know what I'm saying? It's a film you can look back on and be like, okay, this is why it's good for a reason.
I like that a lot. I think that the main takeaway for me after watching this movie for probably the 250,000th time is that it really is timeless. And we went over it earlier, so I won't harp on it too much, but where we are now and what superhero movies have become, you know, it feels like we need something fresh. And honestly, to scratch that itch, I go back to movies like this because it feels fresh still, because it's not held down by all of this extra info you got to know or all this exposition you're going to have to take in. You know, it is what it is. It tells the story it wants to tell. And it's pretty enjoyable along the way. And it's not talking at you the whole time, you know? A lot of it is done through the visual storytelling or even the sound storytelling that's not words, you know? But I love this movie. I'm always going to love this movie, and I could sit here all day talking about this movie. But I mean, I got to ask you, because for those of you who don't know, obviously Bethanne is also known for her podcast "She Will Rock You," that she does with Leah. I got to know, are there any tracks from this soundtrack that are worth adding to your favorites playlist? Is there anything on here, even I hate using the term needle drop, but are there even any needle drops that just go, ooh, that was great?
I mean, I don't necessarily like this band, but it fits so well. And it's the Guns N' Roses song that's in there. I can't think of it right now. But you know what I'm talking about? It's just how it lands together with the imagery, with the suit. Oh, it's perfect. But also, let's also give a shout out to the people who listen to cinematic scores like me, because we're nerds. The score itself is perfect for like writing or working out to.
It really is.
It is. I love a recognizable theme. I love a recognizable theme. And I think and this is another soapbox for me. I've been on a lot of soapboxes today. I really have. We have moved past in cinema scoring into more sound based. So like having certain not necessarily just like sounds like of a door opening or things like that, but things that just have like an ambiance to them. And it's not necessarily bad, but I do, you know, long for the days of a noticeable theme. And I feel like we've kind of left that a little bit in filmmaking, and it makes me a little bit sad.
I think it's being treated more as a necessity than anything else right now, and that's not how it should be viewed. It should be approached as a personality trait of the film, which I think I said verbatim earlier, is that it gives the movie another layer of personality, where a lot of these newer films, so it has that cinematic score where someone sat down and watched this movie and figured out, all right, where do we bring in the big swells and where do we die things down to really bring in, the attention and the emotion. But when it takes a step further and it becomes an extension of the characters that are in the movie, and it helps describe and helps you understand the story that's being told, I think that's in a league of its own, and that's what a lot of the modern superhero cinema is missing. So, I mean, this is so off base, but like when directors like Martin Scorsese say that like superhero cinema isn't cinema, I think that's a lot of the reason why, is because the basic blueprint for it really isn't movies like this. It's
Right.
almost like they're just trying to emulate it or taking the same checklist for it, But
Yeah.
it's missing a
Very
lot of the heart and the
algorithmic.
passion that goes into that too.
I agree 100%.
He cut me off. He's like, the MCU is still great. I'm not saying the MCU is bad. I'm just saying it's not what it used to be, because how can you measure up to a movie like this?
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I mean, we could have a conversation. I'm sure there'll be in our podcast a larger conversation about the MCU, especially with your experience with the direct, especially because you bring a really
It'll be
good
an ongoing
perspective
theme.
into it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's
You're
just
gonna
like,
hear about it whether you like it or not.
yeah. But like, yeah, this is the film that the MCU, there has been times where they've cracked the code and they've gotten close
Mhm.
to this, or they've, in some cases have been on par with it. But it's hard to sometimes emulate something special like this and expect to crack the code every time you mimic it.
Right. I agree. Yeah, you're not always going to make a masterpiece, but at the same time, you can still try.
You can still try.
I mean, it's hard to make every movie be a banger when you got 3 of them coming out every year. But I think they've adjusted to that pretty well. And that honestly, we can make a whole episode about that conversation, and you can go check out Lights, Thunder, Action, the previous podcast I did with the great movie maker, actor, director, producer Thomas Carter Rochester.
TCR.
We did that on I mean, I don't even
The
know how
GOAT.
long. He did it with David Thompson for forever, and then he handed it off to me when David went off to do his own thing. But we always talked about the state of the MCU and where it is, where it was, where we want it to be. So I mean, we can save that for here or for that entire show we used to do. But when it comes to Iron Man, there's 2 more things I want to do with it. I probably should have teased this other one earlier, but we're gonna make essentially a pairing of a drink that we think matches this movie best, and we're gonna get to that in a minute. But Bethanne, I asked you about this earlier. You've got a Letterboxd review for this movie.
I do.
I gotta know what it is.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
I'm ready. And hold on. I gotta take a sip first.
Now, okay, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yes, that's gonna make everything better. But first, let me know. Is it a when I use Letterboxd, I
You
think
are so nervous.
the orange heart. I am very nervous. I'm really on edge right now. But when I use the orange heart on Letterboxd to say if I liked it or not, basically that's my indicator for whether or not I'm gonna watch that movie again, if it's rewatchable to me. So with that criteria, would you hit the like button on this movie?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, that's all I wanted to
didn't
hear.
write my stars into this, but I will add it after I read this. So here's my review. Okay.
Let's hear it. All right, let's hear the review.
And I might have to read this twice, just in case. But anyway,
It's all right.
it's a
You're
bird.
Like, how many sips in?
Like 5. Also, are you supposed to hold it in your mouth for a long period of time? Because it really burns now. I just kind of held it there and I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like my brain stopped working.
Oh,
it was
my
like
gosh.
I forgot how to swallow. And I was like, oh, this is nasty. I don't know if you saw my expression. I was like,
She's
anyway.
really sipping on it now.
Yeah. Okay. So
we got to hear this review. All right.
Ready?
I'm super nervous now because now you're the one building it up.
Here we go. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's a colloquial trope to talk about our first Letterboxd review, Iron Man. The film is a legacy starter, launching the juggernaut we now know as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the MCU. Before the pixie dust could bippity boppity boop its way into formulaic filmmaking, Iron Man stands as the outlier of the franchise, establishing a tone in stark contrast to its counterparts.
Nice.
As the first film, it retains the exclusive right to be in its own universe, from Tony Stark's unbenevolence and crassness to flight attendants with stripper poles. The film and its characters are allowed to be themselves. Yet, despite its differences to current installations, the film does a good job laying the framework for the MCU's overarching story arc. It strikes a healthy balance between future Easter eggs without taking away from the story it tries to tell in its 2 hours and 7-minute runtime. Like the late and great Howard Stark, Walt Disney famously said, "I hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by Tony Stark." Paraphrased.
Wow. That's great. Wow, the Walt Disney paraphrase at the end really ties it all together.
He is the Mickey Mouse. RDJ is Mickey Mouse.
That's the perfect comparison. He is where it all started and where it can all be credited back to. It all starts with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, again, aging well, this movie doesn't feel like a movie where they're trying to kickstart a universe, you know? Now, if you were talking about Iron Man 2, I would say that something else, because that movie, it's like they couldn't be more excited to start a cinematic universe, you know? But with this movie, they let it happen so naturally, and it was really like they just teed everything up to kind of take place later if they wanted it to. And I think phase 1 and 2 of the MCU did that really well, where they would plant stuff just to plant it. You know, and there's certain scenes in like the Avengers where, you know, a camera angle pans over to something for a second too long and you're like, oh, that could mean something, you know, but they were so good at their foresight and thinking of how can I set this up for potential success or a potential storyline, you know? But Iron Man really started that so well, where other than the post-credit scene that you saw with Samuel L. Jackson, if you stayed for it, because no one was looking for post-credit scenes back then, but if you did, you got in on a little secret that they were starting something bigger.
Man, they went on MySpace, dude. They started talking about that shit on the boards.
MySpace. Yeah, that was 2008. It would have been Facebook and MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Twitter. Early Twitter. Early
Twitter. Very early Twitter.
Yeah, I wasn't on any of those. I was in my 4th grade math book, but I did do a book report on the junior novel for this movie.
Nice.
I was in 4th grade, so it was probably a little bit too old to be doing that, but I would do it today, and I'm 27, so never gonna grow up.
There you go.
Let's go ahead and move on. Well, okay. Well, before we move on, you got to tell me how many stars you were giving this movie.
Oh, I'd give it 4.
4 stars. That's solid.
I think it's a solid.
You agree? What, Alexis? What would you give it? 4? 5? 5.
What would Lady give?
Married the right girl. Lady, what would you give Iron Man out of 5 stars? All right, she licked her lips, so I'm gonna take that as a good sign.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a hit. Iron Man. If it's below 4 stars, you need to watch it again because you missed something. Now we got to figure out, and this is going to be something we workshop, you know, over many episodes, but there's a drink that goes with this movie. We got to figure out what it is, but there's definitely a drink that you can pair with this movie that feels just right. I personally have a couple candidates, mainly because I've watched this movie so many times. I've tried most of these at this point while I'm watching it.
You have a very good list, a very thoughtful list.
Thank you. It a lot of thought went in. I can't promise that every list is going to be this thoughtful, because this is about, well, how many years has it been since this movie came out? 15?
Yeah. Wait till you get to my movie next. Wait until you get to one of my films. It's only gonna be one drink can be used, and it's a White Russian. So well,
there's a lot of different directions you can. So okay, without further ado, for the drink pairings for Iron Man, the drinks that I think would go best. First off, is an old fashioned. It's classic, but it's got a modern twist. That's exactly what this movie is. It's a superhero story that they'd already been working on superhero movies with all the ones we mentioned earlier. but it never really hit Hollywood the way that Iron Man hit it. And that's because it was simple, it was elegant, but it was resilient. Like you can see now, it's still holding up as one of the better superhero movies in our opinion. But you could also say it's like a martini. You know, you could say that it's elegant and it's refined. You know, it took a lot of work to figure out a superhero story that would work at this caliber, and it's iconic. You know, it's got legacy, both culturally, socially, in the film industry. And then you could also say it's like a Negroni. Who I've never personally tried this, specifically because I don't know if I would like it, but it's got more of a, from what I've been told, a bittersweet complexity where it's more of an acquired taste. You know, when I say Iron Man's my favorite movie, I don't get the same reaction from everyone. You know, and most people say, "Oh yeah, it was a pretty good movie," but some people don't like Tony Stark as a character. You know,
Some people don't have class.
some people don't
don't
have
have
class. But it is an acquired taste. That's because it's bold. It's unapologetic. You know, it's got it's got gin, vermouth. What's the third one? Campari. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
I don't know because I don't drink it, but that's literally the genius billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. Like that's it's so many
Good.
different pieces coming
good.
together. You know, so I mean, when I think of this movie, I think of an old fashioned because it's iconic, but it's still bringing something new to the table. You know, I mean, you could even say whatever wine ages best. You know, because when it comes to this movie, I'm just thinking of how well it aged over time. Even if it was received more bitterly by certain viewers back when it came out, they might appreciate it more now because of everything that it's been able to do and everything that points back to it. You know, so that's my very long-winded drink pairing list.
So who gets the honor?
What's your input? If of the things that I mentioned, I mean, you could just say whiskey on the rocks. That's literally what the movie opens with. We see that before we even see anyone's face. We just see this. So I mean,
Right. It almost makes sense that it's a whiskey on the rocks, and I think that's a good start to all of this. So I lean towards that. It's either that or Negroni because of the way you explained it. Just those little like triplet moments there.
I really appreciate that.
But I mean, I guess I go towards the old fashioned, man. Just a whiskey on the rocks or a little bit of a twist in there. Like that is this film.
Yeah.
So that's my vote, but it's ultimately
whiskey on the rocks. It's straight. It's unapologetic. It tells it like it is. You can infer what you want.
On rocks though. God,
man, people are gonna listen to this and be like, "Have they never had whiskey before?" Like,
no. One of us. I've had whiskey. I drink whiskey when it's absolutely desperate and there's nothing else there where I'm located.
That's fair. I mean, it gets the job done.
Yeah. Gets the job done. Sometimes you need someone to smack you in the face.
Oh
and whiskey is that drink.
Final thoughts on Iron Man as a movie for sipping on cinema.
I think it's the perfect film to start off this show. It really is.
I agree.
And kudos to you for choosing it.
90% of it is the fact that the movie starts with a whiskey glass. I mean, if we're really wanting to set the tone for this, I think that's really what does it. So if no other reason, let it be that. But yeah, now you know, if you didn't already, that I really like Iron Man. I really like it. And I always will.
That's a good closer, man.
So we're going to be doing a lot more of this. This is the first of many sips that we'll take on cinema.
Thanks
the next
for staying
one,
with us.
Yeah, I honestly,
this ramblings.
Who's even here at this point? Leave a comment if you're here, wherever you're listening. I don't think you can comment on Spotify, but we'll be on YouTube. Definitely leave us a review. And if you have a question, we're more than happy to answer it here on the show. Put it in the review or shoot us an email. sippingoncinema@gmail.com, right? Yeah, sippingoncinema@gmail.com. Send your inquiries there. Or any ideas you have for things we want to talk about. So we're going to be doing a lot more of this. For our next sip, it's a choice of Bethanne's. Bethanne, can you give us a little bit of a tease on what our next sip on cinema will be?
I'm going to say it's a sip worthy of the theater.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
And that's it.
That's all we're getting. Okay, that's all we're getting.
That's
All
all you're
right.
getting.
Well, all right. Well, there you have it. So theater will be something. You're gonna have to tune in to our next episode to find out what we'll be sipping on next.
Dun, dun, dun.
But that's gonna do it for this episode. I haven't really figured out an outro yet.
You want me to take the outro?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Cool. Welcome to our first outro of the podcast. I have here in the notes to do sponsor thanks for Manscaped. Anyway, so
That was her
thanks for
note, by the
joining our what?
That was her note, by the way.
That was my note, correct. Thanks for listening. You can find Sipping on Cinema wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Google Play, or Apple iTunes pod. I don't know what they call it these days, but anyway, go get
Apple
your podcast
Podcasts.
there.
I
I'm a
would say
little rusty.
Apple Podcasts. Seems like they're getting away from the
Got
whole iTunes thing.
Okay, got you. Apple Podcasts. You also can find us on
2018.
social media. We are on Twitter because I refuse to call it X at Sipping with Cinema. And that is also the same for the Instagram at Sipping with Cinema. You can find
Sipping
me.
on
I am
cinema.
Sipping on. Oh shit. Sipping on Cinema. Anyway.
This has been an ongoing issue in our group chats and in our documentation and
Yeah,
pretty much everything
correct.
we've been putting together.
That's correct. And it's mostly my fault.
It's really
'cause I'm
put me on
dyslexic.
edge because she's doing all the graphics.
Well, I got a story to tell you after this. Anyway, you can find me. I am Bethanne Ciaccio-Tarpley. You can find me at Bethanne Tarpley. JRB, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram or X/Twitter at JRB9723. I'll be changing that. I just don't know what to change it to yet. So we'll figure that out. But
We'll figure it out.
yeah, you can also find me on Letterboxd. That's really the main component here. Is letterboxd.com/JRB_direct. I'll probably change that too, but that's for my direct days, and I'm not gonna part ways with it quite yet. But if you want to see my first hand reactions to all the movies I watch, that's where I put it. I use Letterboxd as my diary for literally everything I do movie related, so you'll see a lot of that translate to this show. But yeah, I would say that's the most relevant thing I do. You can also find my personal blog at realreflections.net, REELREFLECTIONS.net. That's literally where I just dump all my other thoughts that maybe always don't fit into places like Letterboxd. So check that out too.
Awesome. Other than that, thanks for joining our parasocial relationship. Join us. Pull up a chair with us.
I'm gonna finish this bottle.
Okay, I'm gonna finish this sip. Ugh.
I'll send you another bottle so you don't have to go back to that drugstore
In
or
the
liquor
words of
store,
Elf-
whatever it was.
Jesus Christ. Speaking of Jon Favreau in Elf, where he's like, do I have to keep drinking this? And he goes, no, buddy.
Buddy, you don't have to.
You don't
Thank
have to
you.
keep drinking
Puts
it.
it down.
Thank you.
Syrup and coffee. Why didn't I think of that?